The really useful thing about the last 3 chapters is that if you've followed those chapters and have gone through carefully all the work in that, then this chapter can be really easy for you. I'm going to talk about validation, and just primarily to emphasize the importance of doing it, and I'll show you the W3C validator, but you may find other tools around, but running it through the World Wide Web Consortium validator is a very easy thing to do, and of course you will be confident that if it validates against that, then it is properly compliant as an HTML5 website. So let's just go through this very quickly, because you should not have any major problems. However, it is important to do it because web browsers are remarkably fault tolerant, and as a result of that, something like this, which actually by mistake I didn't correct it in the last in the lecture on forms in the previous chapter. It has got a mistake in it. Just by looking at it, actually my eye goes to it straight away. Now I know where the error is, but if you looked at the larger file, I've only shown the basic outline, the example as we had it by the end of the forms lecture in the previous chapter had more content in it, and as a result it was harder to spot the error in it. The error was neither was it obvious from any of the browsers that I ran it through. As a relatively simple piece of markup, then all the browsers I've tried this on do actually render it as expected. I probably would have found the issue if I'd put any styling on this, because it wouldn't have reflected the styling that I intended correctly. But just take another look at that and see if you can quickly spot the well, it's a sort of deliberate error in that I've put back the uncorrected file and popped it up here. But the way to pull out something like that before you go to the trouble of styling it and finding confusing errors is to run it through a validator. And the W3C markup validation service is there and available, and really do make use of it, because you will pick up these kinds of errors, small obscure ones which the browsers will may well mask, but will sooner or later, as you continue developing the website, reveal themselves in a rather unfortunate way and possibly very difficult to diagnose way. And I'll show you actually it's not necessarily that straightforward to pull out the error even from the validation service. So look at this, you've got 3 ways of validating your HTML. Either point the validator at an online website, and I'll show you that in action shortly, or to validate it by a file upload. And finally, possibly the less useful one, because typing the code directly into it means that even if it is valid, unless you've been careful to copy it into another document, it will disappear when you leave the page. So it's a good feature for learning by, but validating by file upload or validating by URI have good use cases associated with them. So before you actually publish it, whilst you're developing the code, then validating by file upload is extremely useful, and that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to upload that file, and we see that it's generated 4 errors, and then the usual software development experience, we've got 4 errors, and actually one problem will fix all 4 errors. So the issue here is actually identified there, because in line 10 I've got what appears to be an unclosed element header, and 2 lines preceding that I've got another unclosed element header, and in fact those two should be an open-close pair, and those first 2 errors in that list again are as a result of the unclosed header. So what I did was to forget to put the slash before header in the closing element. So a simple error to make. Actually, if you use the Sublime Text, the editor that I'm using correctly, it will prompt you with the closing bracket. So if you're using that in a nice systematic way, then the likelihood of making this error is reduced, similarly with whatever your preferred editor is. But these things happen, and running it through the validator has picked it out, which my simple eyeballing of the file hadn't done, and my running it in the browser, several versions of the browser, hadn't done either. So this is where the error is, and so I've got a header element and I haven't closed it properly. I've appeared to have started a new header element nested inside the first header element. That's hence the first 2 errors. So that's easy to fix, and we'll do that in that file. Without you can see that's correct now. And I run that through the validator again, and it gave me a clean bill of health for a correctly validating HTML5 document. This is again one of the benefits of keeping your division of responsibilities correct, that the marking up of the document goes in the HTML, because when it comes to debugging, once you've run some HTML through the validator, it's much easier if it's not a mixture of sorting out issues with the HTML, sorting out issues with the styling, possibly issues with the tags on the styling and so forth. That gets quite horrendous. So in good software engineering practice, going back to a first paper written on software engineering by Alan Turing on debugging a large routine, where he again showed that the way to do this is to partition any complex problem up into well-defined subproblems with clearly defined responsibilities, and then sorting the issues out is easy. He saw that straight away as one of the first coders of electronic computers, and we should all learn from that, and the World Wide Web Consortium certainly has done in this nice clean separation of responsibilities, and you can benefit from that, and indeed you should. So make sure you've got, before you even send your marked up HTML to the star lists, make sure it does validate, and then they're not going to be, when they start doing the styling of your website, they're not going to be coming back and pointing fingers at you because their styling's all gone pear-shaped because there was some messy markup in your HTML. The browser won't spot it for you, a validator will. And do come back to revalidate your old sites. I've run through a version of a website which I produced quite a few years ago in HTML4, and but hoping it was standards compliant. And what it's done on the index page here is picked up that I was using the acronym element when I should be using the abbreviation element now if I want to be consistent. So that's not a critical failure, but it's something which I would be, in terms of for maintainability purposes, well advised to fix, and it won't take a few minutes to sort that out. So keep any of your live websites, just keep checking them to make sure that there are no issues. Possibly as the site continues to get maintained, keep revalidating it. Doesn't take a moment. So what I did here again was to use the validate by URI. So I just pasted the URI to my old website into that, or a version of the old website into that, and it's picked up just a repeated error through it, or for an obsolete element. And that's all I need to say about validation, because in effect the whole of the first 3 chapters were trying to get you to write from the start code that would validate correctly when put through it. But occasionally you will make little mistakes, no matter how good your editor is at matching syntax correctly. You'll occasionally make a slip up. Browsers will hide the errors because that's what they're designed to do. They're designed to be tolerant. That's the key difference between HTML and XML. So we want the web experience to gracefully degrade, and as a result of that, for web documents, then the consensus is on HTML rather than XML variants of HTML, because we want that fault tolerance. But as a result of that, you may well be publishing documents. If you're only relying on the browser to pick up errors, you may well be publishing documents which have got little pernicious problems in them, and sooner or later something's going to happen to reveal those lurking problems, and it can be extremely tedious to actually find them out. So go through systematically, keep your HTML as validated standards-based HTML, and run it through a validator after you've made any significant changes, and certainly before you publish it, and you will make sure that none of those lurking errors are present.